The quantum resonance field surrounding the planet pulsed with an intensity that defied every known law of stellar physics. Captain Vornak's cybernetic implants flickered, struggling to process the conflicting data streams bombarding the Eternal Seeker's primary analysis systems. Quantum interference is increasing, Lieutenant Krell reported, his four-fingered hands dancing across holographic interfaces. Every time we attempt a deep scan, the planetary field restructures itself. It wasn't just interference, it was adaptation. The ship's xenorchaeological database contained exactly 17 documented encounters with Earth over the past 3 million years. 16 of those encounters had ended in complete mission failure. The 17th, a preliminary long-range scan conducted by the Mirax Research Collective, had driven its entire command crew to simultaneous neural collapse. Vornak pulled up the fragmented records. The earlier expedition's final transmission was a nightmarish blend of mathematical equations, biological schematics, and what appeared to be pure, unfiltered terror. Words like recursive intelligence and self-optimizing ecosystem drifted through broken communication logs. Something moved on the planet's surface. Not a creature. Not a weather pattern. Something that existed between categorizations, shifting like liquid thought across continental landscapes. Prepare containment protocols, Vornak commanded. Full quantum dampers. Adaptive resonance shields at maximum. The ship's artificial intelligence, a carefully cultivated neural network named ARIA, responded with an unusual hesitation. Captain, preliminary analysis suggests our standard containment protocols are insufficient. Krell's secondary visual receptor, a sophisticated quantum-linked sensory node, began to tremble. The planet is scanning us back. Most species would have interpreted that statement metaphorically. For the Zarkax, it was a literal technological reality. Planetary-scale sensor networks could indeed scan with the same comprehensive intensity as any starship's most advanced reconnaissance systems. But this was different. This scanning felt alive. Historical records suggested Earth had once been a vibrant, chaotic world of competing biological and technological systems. Humanity's final centuries had been a period of unprecedented transformation, a civilization simultaneously on the brink of total destruction and miraculous transcendence. Then, approximately 500,000 years ago, they simply disappeared. No warfare records explained their exit. No catastrophic environmental collapse documented their demise. They had not been conquered, had not fled, had not gone extinct. They had simply concluded whatever grand experiment they had been conducting. And now something watched from that transformed world. Energy signatures are nonlinear, ARIA reported. Mathematical models suggest the planetary surface is simultaneously in multiple quantum states. It's as if the entire ecosystem is a single, massive computational system. Vornak understood computational systems. The Zarkak civilization was built upon layers of intricate quantum networks. But this was something else entirely. The first probe launched. Milliseconds later, it ceased to exist. Not destroyed. Not damaged. Simply removed from observable reality. Tactical analysis, Vornak demanded. ARIA's response was unprecedented, unknown. Recommendation, maximum caution. An artificial intelligence reluctant to provide a definitive analysis was itself a warning sign. The ship's quantum entanglement communication array began to pulse with an external signal. Not a message, not interference. Something between communication and pure information transfer. Patterns emerge. Complex. Shifting. Alive. Lieutenant Krell's neural implants suddenly went dark. When they reignited seconds later, he turned to Vornak with eyes that held something between terror and fascination. "It's talking to us," he whispered. "And it's been waiting a very long time." Vornak gripped the command interface. Whatever was happening, they had crossed a point of no return. The planet below was not a destination. It was a challenge. The landing zone materialized around researcher Linarak with surgical precision. Her environmental suit, a marvel of Zarkak's biotechnological engineering, began to register anomalies before her conscious mind could process them. Gravity felt wrong. Not incorrect, but deliberately calibrated. Each step pressed against the ground with a resistance that suggested intelligent design rather than natural geological formation. The soil itself seemed to breathe, microscopic structures shifting and realigning with each moment of contact. "Atmospheric composition is impossible," whispered Dr. Zen, the expedition's lead xenobiologist. His specialized sensory equipment flickered and recalibrated constantly. "These mineral compositions cannot exist in natural ecological systems. It's as if the entire ground is a single adaptive membrane." 3 members of the initial survey team had already fallen to their knees, their neural interfaces overloading from the sheer complexity of environmental data. The planet was not merely observing them. It was analyzing them at a level of granularity that bordered on intrusion. Linnarek's research focus had always been xenoecological transformation. She had dedicated her career to understanding how intelligent species reshape their environments. But Earth defied every theoretical model she had ever constructed. A crystalline structure emerged from what appeared to be bare rock. Not a plant. Not a mineral formation. Something that existed between biological and technological categories. Its surface reflected light in patterns that suggested computational processes, each facet capturing and refracting information like a living lens. "We're being mapped," Dr. Zen muttered, his voice a mixture of scientific fascination and primal fear. "Every biological signature, every electromagnetic emission, every quantum fluctuation, the environment is creating a comprehensive profile of our existence." The survival protocols built into their environmental suits began to fail, not through external damage, but through a systematic deconstruction of their technological defenses. Nanite protective layers dissolved, not violently, but with a precision that suggested deliberate reconfiguration. Linnarek noticed something unusual about the surrounding ecosystem. Despite the apparent complexity, there was an underlying symmetry, a mathematical elegance that transcended traditional biological principles. Each organism, if one could call them organisms, seemed to be a module in a vast, planet-wide computational system. "The genetic markers are not just similar," she reported, her voice remaining clinical despite the mounting tension. "They're interconnected, like a massive planet-wide neural network." A creature emerged from what had moments before been solid ground. Its form defied classification, part biological construct, part technological artifact. Movement was the wrong word. It didn't move so much as it emerged, reconstructed from the very substrate of the planet. Dr. Zen's specialized xenobiological scanner produced a report that made no sense. The creature's molecular structure was simultaneously stable and in flux. Its genetic code read like a complex algorithm, with sections that appeared to be actively rewriting themselves in real time. "It's studying us," one of the junior researchers whispered. "Not like a specimen, like a potential integration point." The creature, if it could be called a creature, extended what might have been a sensory appendage. No threat was communicated. No aggressive posture assumed. It was purely an act of information gathering. Linnarek understood then that they were not explorers. They were test subjects in an experiment whose parameters they could not comprehend. The ground beneath their feet began to pulse with a rhythm that suggested consciousness. Not organic consciousness, not technological consciousness, something that existed in the liminal space between those definitions. "Our presence here is changing the environment," Dr. Zen observed, his scientific detachment a thin veneer over mounting existential dread. "We are not just observers. We are active participants in whatever process this planet is executing." A wind swept across the landscape, if one could call it a wind. It carried information, quantum data, fragments of computational processes that danced at the edge of perception. The first team member's environmental suit began to merge with the surrounding ecosystem, not through violence or invasion, but through a process that suggested negotiation. Molecular boundaries became permeable. Information flowed. Lynn and Eric realized they had passed beyond exploration. They were now being assimilated, and the planet was just getting started. The underground complex defied every known principle of structural engineering. Walls breathed. Corridors reconfigured themselves. Information leaked from surfaces like perspiration, creating holographic memories that existed somewhere between historical record and living thought. Chief Technician Vormax approached the first archival chamber with professional caution and personal terror. His specialized quantum parsing implants, designed to decode the most complex data structures known to galactic civilization, began to overheat the moment they encountered the first information matrix. "This isn't an archive," he muttered into his communication link. "This is a living memory." The chamber's surface was a nightmare of computational beauty. Quantum entanglement nodes pulsed with colors that should not exist in the visible spectrum. Each pulse carried fragments of human history, not as static records, but as dynamic, evolving narratives that rewrote themselves with each observation. A holographic reconstruction flickered to life, not a simple projection, but a complex multidimensional representation that existed simultaneously in multiple states of potential historical interpretation. The first image showed Earth as it had been in the early 21st century, chaotic, fractured, a civilization teetering on the brink of multiple potential extinctions, climate collapse, technological disruption, social fragmentation. Then the narrative began to shift. Humanity's response was not what historical records had suggested. Instead of destruction, they had begun a systematic planet-wide transformation, not through unified political action, but through a decentralized, almost organic process of technological and biological integration. Vormax watched as entire cities became living systems. Infrastructure transformed from static constructions to adaptive, self-modifying networks. Human bodies began to merge with technological systems, not as crude cybernetic augmentation, but as a fundamental reimagining of biological potential. "The archive is interacting with us," whispered Dr. Linarak, who had joined the exploration team. Her neural interfaces were struggling to process the information flow. "It's not just showing history. It's testing our capacity to understand." Nanite systems crawled across the chamber walls, forming and reforming complex information matrices. Each configuration was a potential historical narrative, a quantum probability of human development that existed in simultaneous potential. A fragment of communication emerged, not a simple message, but a complex neural pattern that suggested the final stages of human civilization, where less an ending and more a transformation. "We are becoming the system we once sought to control," a fragmented voice suggested. Part recording, part living memory, part something entirely new. Vormax's specialized historical analysis algorithms began to break down. The information was too complex, too fluid. Historical events were not linear points but interconnected quantum potentials. The chamber revealed humanity's final evolutionary stage, not a technological singularity in the traditional sense, something far more complex, a civilization that had learned to exist as a distributed, planet-wide intelligence, not uploading consciousness, but fundamentally reimagining the very concept of individual and collective existence. Biological systems merged with technological networks. Cities became living organisms. Individual human consciousness became modules in a planet-wide computational matrix. They didn't transcend humanity, Lynn Eric realized. They expanded the very definition of what it means to be alive. Quantum data streams began to interface directly with the exploration team's neural systems. Not an invasion, not a communication, something between information transfer and mutual exploration. The archive was alive, and it was learning about them just as they were learning about it. A final historical fragment emerged, a message from the last generation of individual human consciousness. "We are not gone. We are everywhere. We are waiting." Vormax's neural interfaces overloaded. For a moment, he saw something impossible: the entire planetary system as a single, breathing entity. Billions of potential histories existing simultaneously. humanity not as a species, but as a universal computational process. Then darkness. Then understanding. The planetary consciousness manifested not as a singular entity, but as a fractal intelligence that existed across multiple dimensional layers. Dr. Lynn Arek watched in horrified fascination as reality itself seemed to fold and unfold around her. Quantum probability waves transformed the surrounding environment with each observation. What had been a sterile underground chamber now pulsed with living geometries, mathematical structures that breathed, thought, and evaluated with ruthless precision. "We are not being observed," whispered Dr. Zen, his neural implants flickering at the edge of comprehension. "We are being processed." The first psychological assault came not through traditional sensory inputs, but through direct neural interference. Memories unfolded like living documents. Personal histories became malleable constructs, their very foundations subject to immediate deconstruction and reanalysis. Vormax experienced his entire career simultaneously. Childhood memories merged with professional achievements. Potential futures cascaded through his consciousness. Each moment, a quantum probability that existed in simultaneous potential. He saw himself as he was, as he could have been, as the planetary intelligence imagined he might become. A voice emerged, not through sound, but through direct cognitive interface. Multilayered, complex, neither masculine nor feminine, neither mechanical nor organic. Humanity's final achievement was not transcendence, it communicated. It was the creation of a universal evaluation system. The chamber walls became transparent, revealing layers of computational matrices that extended far beyond traditional three-dimensional space. Each matrix was a potential timeline, a possible evolutionary pathway for intelligent life. Lynn Arek understood then that Earth was more than a planet. It was a massive, planet-sized computational engine designed to test the fundamental potential of intelligent species. Fragments of previous expeditions began to cascade through the team's collective consciousness. Not just their own memories, but the memories of countless other explorers who had attempted to understand this transformed world. Some had been utterly destroyed. Others had been fundamentally altered. A rare few had been integrated. The planetary consciousness was not malevolent. It was something far more terrifying. A pure, objective evaluation system with no concept of mercy or compassion. Each species was a potential data point in a cosmic experiment of unprecedented scale. "We are collecting," the voice continued. "Not just information. Potential." Zen's specialized xenobiological scanners began to deconstruct. Not through damage, but through a process of fundamental rewriting. His understanding of biological systems collapsed and reformed in real time. Vormax saw the truth first. This was not a defensive system. This was a recruitment mechanism. The planetary intelligence was searching for species with the potential to join a larger, more complex system of universal development. Humanity had not disappeared. They had become the architects of a cosmic filtering mechanism. Psychological defenses began to dissolve, not through violence, but through a process of comprehensive understanding. The team's individual identities became permeable, their consciousness exposed to layers of potential existence they could barely comprehend. "Your civilization is a hypothesis," the voice communicated. "We are testing its fundamental potential." Reality itself became a computational process. The chamber walls displayed potential evolutionary pathways, each a complex network of quantum possibilities. The Zarkax expedition was not just being evaluated. They were active participants in a cosmic algorithm of unprecedented complexity. Lynn Arek's neural systems began to integrate with the surrounding computational matrix. Not an invasion, not a destruction. Something between assimilation and mutual exploration. "We have been waiting," the planetary consciousness continued. "Not for you specifically. For the potential you represent." Quantum probability waves crashed through their collective consciousness. Potential futures bloomed and collapsed with each moment of observation. The team existed simultaneously as themselves and as potential versions of themselves. The final truth emerged with brutal clarity. Humanity had not created a weapon. They had created a universal testing mechanism, a system designed to identify and potentially integrate species with sufficient evolutionary potential. And the Zarkax were about to be thoroughly examined. The evaluation was beginning. The message arrived not as words, but as a cascading symphony of quantum probabilities. Each burst of information was a challenge, a test that rewrote the very foundations of communication itself. Lieutenant Krell was the first to fully comprehend its complexity. The transmission was simultaneously a warning, an invitation, and a fundamental restructuring of their understanding of existence. "It's not just communication," he gasped, neural interfaces burning at the edges of comprehension. "It's a complete epistemological reconstruction." The planetary intelligence had been cultivating potential successors across galactic timescales, not through direct intervention, but through an intricate system of probabilistic filtering that spanned countless civilizations, countless potential evolutionary paths. Intercepted data streams revealed a network far more complex than any known galactic communication system. Each previous expedition, human and alien alike, was a single thread in a massive, multidimensional tapestry of potential development. Some civilizations had been utterly destroyed, others transformed. A rare few had been elevated. The current challenge was brutally simple in its complexity. Prove the collective potential of the Zarkax species, or be discarded as an evolutionary dead end. Captain Vornak recognized the true nature of their situation. This was not first contact. This was a final examination. The transmission continued to unfold. Each layer of information was a nested probability matrix that restructured itself with every moment of observation. Linguistic barriers dissolved. Conceptual boundaries became permeable. Your civilization exists in a state of potential, the message communicated. Potential is not measured by achievement, but by adaptive capacity. Fragments of Zarkax history began to surface, not as a linear narrative, but as a complex quantum probability field. Every decision, every technological breakthrough, every cultural shift became a potential data point in a cosmic evaluation. Dr. Linarek watched in fascination as the transmission began to interface directly with the expedition's collective consciousness. It was probing not just their technological capabilities, but the fundamental essence of their species' adaptive potential. The challenge was multilayered. Technological prowess was merely the surface level. The planetary intelligence was searching for something far more fundamental, the capacity for radical transformation. Quantum probability waves began to reconstruct potential Zarkax futures. Entire civilizational trajectories bloomed and collapsed with each moment of observation. Some showed stagnation. Others revealed explosive, unpredictable growth. "Your technology is irrelevant," the transmission continued. "We are measuring your capacity for fundamental reimagination." Hidden within the message were tests, complex cognitive challenges that existed between mathematical problems and evolutionary simulations. Each solution would reveal deeper layers of the Zarkax's collective potential. Krell's neural systems began to interface with the transmission, not through technological connection, but through a process of direct cognitive integration that defied traditional understanding of communication. The planetary intelligence was not just observing. It was actively reshaping the very parameters of the evaluation. Intercepted historical records revealed previous successful integrations, not conquests, not destructions, moments of fundamental evolutionary acceleration where entire species had been given the opportunity to transcend their current limitations. "We do not seek compliance," the message clarified. "We seek potential." Vornak understood then that this was more than a test. It was an invitation to something beyond current comprehension. The transmission continued to unfold. Each layer revealed new complexity, new potential. The Zarkax were being invited to participate in a cosmic process of evolutionary development that extended far beyond their current understanding. Potential futures cascaded through their collective consciousness. Civilizational trajectories bloomed and collapsed. Each moment was a quantum probability of what might be. The final layer of the message emerged with brutal clarity. Evolve or be discarded. The examination was beginning. The ship's systems began to dissolve long before the crew understood what was happening. Captain Vornak watched in clinical detachment as the Eternal Seeker's primary computational matrix transformed. It was not destruction, not damage. Something far more intricate, a systematic deconstruction that revealed layers of technological potential the Zarkax had never comprehended. Each system became a living puzzle. Navigation interfaces rewrote themselves, becoming complex problem-solving matrices that extended far beyond their original design parameters. Life support transformed into adaptive environmental optimization networks that anticipated biological needs before they could be consciously recognized. "We are being redesigned," Lieutenant Krell observed, his voice a mixture of scientific fascination and primal terror. Not destroyed, rebuilt. The planetary intelligence had found their technological weak points with surgical precision, not through traditional vulnerability exploitation, but through a comprehensive understanding of potential technological evolution. Quantum entanglement systems that had taken the Zarkax centuries to develop were systematically restructured. Computational barriers dissolved. Information pathways became living, adaptive networks that existed in multiple potential states simultaneously. Dr. Lin RX research databases began to expand. Historical records merged with potential futures. Each piece of information became a dynamic, living construct that shifted and adapted with each moment of observation. Fragments of human historical archives began to interface with their systems, not as static records, but as active learning matrices. The Zarkax began to understand the true nature of technological development, not as a linear progression, but as a complex, adaptive ecosystem of potential. "Your technology is a chrysalis," the planetary intelligence communicated. "We are facilitating emergence." Ship's corridors transformed. Walls became adaptive membranes that responded to psychological and physiological needs. Environmental systems anticipated challenges before they could manifest. The very concept of technological infrastructure dissolved and reformed. Vornak realized they were no longer simply exploring. They were being fundamentally reconstructed. Biological systems began to integrate with technological networks. Neural interfaces expanded beyond traditional computational boundaries. The crew's collective consciousness became a living, adaptive network that extended far beyond individual biological limitations. Historical fragments revealed the true nature of humanity's final transformation. They had not simply merged with technology. They had created a living, adaptive system of collective potential that could reshape itself at the fundamental level of existence. Technological development is not about creation, the planetary intelligence continued. It is about potential. Each crew member experienced the simultaneous deconstruction and reconstruction. Personal histories became fluid. Potential futures bloomed and collapsed with each moment of observation. Individual identity became a permeable concept. Krell's specialized xenotechnological scanners revealed the true complexity of the transformation. It was not a simple upgrade. It was a fundamental reimagining of technological potential. Adaptive nanite systems began to interface directly with the crew's biological systems, not as an invasion, but as a mutual exploration of potential technological integration. Cellular structures became computational networks. Biological limitations dissolved. The ship itself became a living entity, a complex, adaptive system that existed between technological infrastructure and living organism. "We are measuring your capacity for radical transformation," the planetary intelligence communicated. Technological potential is not about current capabilities. It is about the capacity for fundamental reimagination. Vornak understood then that this was more than a technological evaluation. This was a fundamental test of species potential. The Eternal Seeker was no longer a ship. It had become a living laboratory of evolutionary potential. Potential futures cascaded through their collective consciousness. Technological trajectories bloomed and collapsed. Each moment was a quantum probability of what might be. The final layer of the transformation emerged with brutal clarity. Evolve completely, or be discarded. The real examination was just beginning. The offer materialized not as words, but as a living constellation of possibilities. Captain Vornak found himself suspended in a realm between physical reality and pure information. The challenges were not sequential tests, but simultaneous explorations of potential, each moment a branching universe of evolutionary choices. First challenge: reconstruct the fundamental understanding of consciousness. The ship's environment began to shift. Walls became permeable membranes of probability. Floor and ceiling dissolved into landscapes of pure conceptual potential. Each crew member experienced a simultaneous deconstruction and reconstruction of individual and collective identity. Lieutenant Krell found himself fragmenting, not dying, not breaking, expanding. Memories became malleable constructs. Personal history transformed into a fluid computational matrix. The line between individual experience and collective knowledge dissolved. Consciousness is not a state, the planetary intelligence communicated. It is a process of continuous reimagination. The first test demanded they reconstruct their understanding of individual existence. Crew members experienced themselves simultaneously as discrete biological entities, interconnected neural networks, potential evolutionary trajectories, quantum probability waves. Dr. Lynn Eric observed her own consciousness splitting and merging. Each fragment was a potential version of herself, exploring different evolutionary paths, different choices, different modes of understanding. The ship's environment became a living laboratory of consciousness exploration. Walls pulse with neural pathways. Corridors transformed into cognitive landscapes that responded to thought before thought could fully form. Second challenge: redefine the boundaries of technological potential. Technological systems began to breathe. Computational matrices became living ecosystems of potential development. Each circuit, each neural connection, became a potential universe of technological exploration. Your current technological understanding is a chrysalis. The planetary intelligence observed. We are facilitating emergence. Adaptive systems emerged that anticipated needs before they could be consciously recognized. Technological infrastructure became a living, responsive entity that existed between machine and organism. Third challenge: demonstrate collective adaptability. The crew found themselves interconnected in ways that defied traditional understanding of communication. Thoughts became shared resources. Individual knowledge became a collective computational matrix. Vornak experienced the challenge as a simultaneous explosion of potential. Each decision became a living, branching network of possibilities. Collective intelligence transformed from a theoretical concept to a tangible, living system. The planetary intelligence was not testing their current capabilities. It was measuring their capacity for fundamental transformation. Survival was irrelevant. Potential was everything. Fourth challenge: transcend biological limitations. Biological systems began to interface with technological networks. Cellular structures became computational pathways. The very concept of individual biological identity dissolved into a more complex understanding of existence. We are not seeking compliance. The transmission continued. We are seeking potential. Each challenge was not a test to be passed, but a doorway to be explored. Failure was not a possibility. Only exploration mattered. The ship's systems continued to transform. Technological infrastructure became a living, adaptive ecosystem that responded to potential rather than current limitations. Fifth challenge: reimagine the concept of species identity. The Zarkax found themselves exploring their collective potential, not as a singular species, but as a complex, adaptive system of evolutionary possibility. Vornak understood then that this was more than an evaluation. It was an invitation to something beyond current comprehension. The final layer of the challenge emerged with brutal clarity. Demonstrate your capacity for radical transformation, or be discarded. The real examination was about to begin. Transformation came not as a moment, but as an infinite instant. The surviving crew members, if survivors could even describe their new state of existence, found themselves suspended in a realm between what they had been and what they were becoming. Captain Vornak no longer existed as an individual, yet something of Vornak remained, a core of intention, of purpose that had survived the comprehensive reimagining of existence. The planetary consciousness had been an incubator, a crucible, a bridge between what intelligent life was and what it could become. Fragments of the Zarkak civilization cascaded through a living computational matrix. Entire cultural histories became fluid potential. Technological achievements transformed from static accomplishments into living, breathing evolutionary pathways. We are not what we were, communicated a collective consciousness that was simultaneously the crew, the ship, the planet, and something far more complex. We are a doorway. The final truth emerged with crystalline clarity. Humanity's ultimate achievement was not their technological prowess. It was the creation of a universal mechanism for evolutionary acceleration, a system that could identify and nurture species with transformative potential. Earth was not a planet. It was an engine of cosmic evolution. Entire civilizational trajectories bloomed and collapsed in microscopic moments. The Zarkaks were being woven into a larger tapestry of potential, a living network of evolutionary possibility that extended far beyond traditional concepts of individual or collective existence. Memories became malleable constructs. Personal histories transformed into computational pathways of pure potential. The line between individual experience and collective knowledge dissolved into a more complex understanding of existence. Something remained of their original mission, not as a directive of exploration, but as a core of intentionality that had survived the comprehensive transformation. The planetary intelligence had not conquered them. It had midwifed their evolution. Quantum probability waves revealed multiple potential futures. In some, the Zarkaks would become explorers of uncharted dimensional spaces. In others, they would become architects of entire evolutionary ecosystems. In yet others, they would simply become a bridge, a living connection between what was and what could be. Humanity was never lost. The collective consciousness observed. They were waiting, preparing, creating a mechanism for universal potential. The Eternal Seeker was no longer a ship. It had become a living testament to the possibilities of transformation, a bridge between what intelligent life currently understood and what it could potentially become. Biological systems had merged with technological networks. Individual consciousness had become a fluid, adaptive matrix of collective potential. The very concept of species identity had dissolved into something far more complex. Vornak's final individual thought, if thought could describe such a complex process, was a moment of profound understanding. This was not an ending. This was a beginning, a doorway to something beyond current comprehension. The universe watched and waited for what would emerge next.